Good morning, good morning. Today, let's talk about my motorcycle riding journey and how better to tell that story than to ride on my fastest and most expensive motorcycle that I've ever owned. So it all started back in about 1986, 85, 86. I was in high school, and one day, one of my friends after school came rolling up at one of the locations that we hung out at after school with this little motorcycle. It was a YZ80, and he said somebody left this behind one of the portable buildings. So we're like, okay, that's cool. And one guy took it home. Didn't think much more about it until later, when I went to my friend's house, and he said, yeah, Billy, his next door, is across the street neighbor, and one of the guys I knew in high school, said, yeah, Billy's got the bike over at his garage, and they're trying to get it fixed. And we're like, oh, that's cool, let's go take a look. So we go over there, and they've got it set up on like a coffee can. It's the engine's sitting on a coffee can. Long story short, it needed some clutch plates because the clutch plates were burnt out, and that's why it wasn't running. So we go to the store, or we call the store that had clutch plates for a YZ80, and asked how much it was. They were like something like 15-20 bucks. It wasn't expensive, but it wasn't cheap either. But we put our money together, and we went and bought the clutch plates, put them in, put the oil in, and I think the thing did run. And we started up. It was a two-stroke, and I don't remember if we understood what a two-stroke motor was. But anyway, we got it running, and it ran great. It was pretty cool. I didn't know how to ride a motorcycle. Billy knew how to ride a motorcycle. He knew a little bit more about motorcycles than any of us, because he had one. So we rode around the neighborhood just for fun, and that's how I learned how to ride a motorcycle. I mean, it wasn't hard. It was just, you had to learn the throttle, you had to learn how to shift and stuff like that. So fast forward a few months later, I was over at my friend's house again, across the street from Billy's house, and I don't know what we were doing. We were just kind of hanging out. So we go to Billy's house to see what Billy was up to, and Billy had bought another motorcycle. And so the motorcycle that he had, in which he had actually bought from another high school friend of mine, it was a Yamaha 250, and it was up on a coffee can, or on 2x4s or something, lifted up because it wasn't running. So I was like, well, let me go take a look. And at that time, I was kind of mechanically inclined. I had changed the clutch in my former car. I had a 77 Chevette, and a friend of mine from high school, he was mechanically inclined, and he taught me a lot of car mechanics. His dad was a car mechanic. His dad worked for the police station mainly doing the radios and stuff like that. But he was a very good, knowledgeable mechanic too. So anyway, I go to Billy's house, take a look at his bike. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and so the carburetor was out. And so I said, so what's going on? He said, well, it didn't run. It wouldn't start. I was like, oh, okay. So I knew at that time you need at least air, spark, and fuel to get any engine running. So I knew it had air, and I just couldn't smell any fuel. And I asked, well, does it spark? And he's like, yeah, I checked it, it had spark. So I looked at the carburetor. Didn't really, again, know what I was doing, so I just kind of worked the throttle, shook it a little bit, started smelling gas. It's like, well, it smells like it's got gas. So I put the carburetor back together the best I knew how, just kind of looking at how things fit, and tighten it down. And it's like, okay, so try starting it now. And it started right up. They're like, wow, dude, I spent like hours on this thing and it didn't start. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know what the heck I did, but it started. So my friend who lived across the street, call him Tom. So Tom gets on the bike, and apparently Tom knew how to ride a motorcycle, probably from riding Billy's motorcycle. And so Tom gets on it, rides, and it's like, oh yeah, it's running great. And he asked me, hey, you want to try it? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try it. And so I get on it, and it's, you know, I rode the YZ80, but that was like just a little bit, maybe for a few minutes. And so I get on the 250, and I get it started, right? First gear, no problem. Well, I get it in the second gear, and either out of ignorance or by accident, when I let off the clutch, it slipped. And so the back tire spun out from under me, and the bike fell over. So Tom comes running over, helps me pick up the bike, straightens out the handlebars. He goes, you okay? He's like, yeah, I think I popped the clutch in second gear by accident. So that's all I remember about that. So then fast forward a few weeks later, I'm over at Tom's girlfriend's apartment, and they had the YZ80 over there, and there was a field in the back next to the apartment. And so they were riding the YZ80 around the perimeter of the field. And so it's like, hey, let me take a ride. So I get on it, and I'm riding, and I'm going as fast as this thing will go, right? I mean, it might go like 30 miles an hour. So I go around the field, and one spot in the field apparently had a little divot, and there was a stump or something, and I hit that divot, and the bike just stopped, and I go flying over the handlebars, and I'm still hanging on to the handlebars, and I just remember in slow motion looking down at the front of the bike, and then looking up at the sky, and then falling on the ground. Luckily it had rained a few days before, so the ground was pretty soft. So I landed on my back, and I'm still holding on to the handlebars, and the handlebars came off the bike. My friends were watching me from the apartments, you know, probably about 50-60 yards away. And so like, oh man, we thought you died. So I get up, and they're like, yeah. And I hold up the handlebars in one hand, Um, I just remember hanging on to the handlebars. So now fast forward probably about 6 months later, my car started leaking oil and transmission fluid really bad, so I just parked it. And just having a conversation with a couple other of my friends, and said, yeah, I need a vehicle. And I was catching rides from friends and stuff to school, or just walking to school. I only lived about 1.5 miles from school. But so Billy says, hey, you know, since you got my other bike running, you want to buy it? I was like, sure, how much? Said $250. Okay. So I agreed to buy the motorcycle from him. Now, back then, I didn't understand about titles or anything like that. I just knew I needed insurance. So I get the bike, and I needed a license too. So I get the bike and I ride just a little bit here and there, just getting used to it. And then go to, we call it DPS, Department of Public Safety in Texas. They don't have, they have a Department of Motor Vehicles, but where you get your license was at the DPS. So I go there, I take my motorcycle license test, and what it is, they follow you. They say, okay, you know, go out of the parking lot, take a right, and then go straight. And if they honk once, you take a right. If they honk twice, you take a left. And they want to see you slow down at every intersection and look left and right. And essentially it was like a 5-minute ride, and that was all it was. I think I got like an 80 because at one intersection I didn't turn my head. I mean, I just kind of looked with my eyes, but they said, yeah, we want you to see you turn your head to make sure that to verify that you look left and right at every intersection. But anyway, pass is pass. So I get my license, and I paid Billy like $125. I think I paid half, and I would give him like $20 a week or something, like, or a month, $20 a month, something like that, until I paid the whole thing off. Well, I ride the thing for about a year, you know, and I think I still owed Billy about, I don't know, $50 or something like that. Not much. I mostly paid it off. Well, one day I'm at work. I work at this hotel downtown, the Hershey Hotel. I mentioned that in one of my other videos. So, and employee parking was in the basement of the hotel, or the parking garage area. We didn't really have basements. And it was in a particular spot. It was up on a concrete pad. So I always parked it there. And one morning, I worked like the really, really early shift, like 4 in the morning or something. I set up ballrooms, tables and chairs and stuff like that for conventions and meetings and stuff. So you have to show up early, because if the convention starts at like 8 in the morning, the convention room had to be set up. So anyway, about 7 o'clock, I get off work. I go out to the parking garage. My bike is gone. I was like, oh man, somebody stole my motorcycle. You know, it's a 250. Anybody could have just picked it up and put it in the back of a truck or something. It just never occurred to me why somebody would steal a motorcycle. And plus, I had been working on it. I mean, I'll tell the story about the 250 later. But I had been working on it, so there were missing parts on it. You know, it was a pretty pretty cheap looking motorcycle. So I go back to the security office, because that's where you enter and exit as an employee, is going by the security office. And I go to the security office and like, hey, can you call the police? I think somebody stole my motorcycle. And I'm like, okay, have a seat. So I sit down, and then I see Tom's dad. Tom's dad was like the general manager of the hotel. I see Tom's dad walking by, and he looks at me and he goes, what the hell did you do? He thought I was in trouble because I was in the security office. And I said, well, I think somebody stole my motorcycle, so I'm asking Larry, the security guard, to call the police. And so he kind of tilts his head, thinks about it, and goes, no, stop, don't call the police. And so Larry's like, why? It's like, I don't think it's stolen. I think Billy came and took your motorcycle. I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, I saw Billy wandering around in the parking lot earlier, because he was there. Tom's dad was there earlier, I guess making his rounds or whatever. But he goes, yeah, I saw Billy walking around the parking lot, and so putting two and two together, you know, he knew I bought the motorcycle from Billy. It's like, yeah, I think Billy took it. Because Billy, there's no reason for Billy to be at the hotel. He didn't work there, you know. He had no other reason to be there besides to come get the motorcycle. So I had to call my friend, come pick me up from work. I go home. I call Billy. It's like, what the hell, Billy? Why'd you take my motorcycle? And Billy goes, oh, my mom said I wasn't allowed to sell my motorcycle. That's literally what Billy sounded like. So I was like, oh crap. So that was the end of the 250 for me. So then fast forward maybe a few years later, a couple of years later, I joined the Navy. I get through boot camp, get through technical school, and I report to my first duty station in San Diego. And I don't really have a car, you know, so I walk everywhere, and you know, bum rides from my friend, my co-workers, and I see an ad in the paper. Back then, people read the newspaper want ads for things for sale. And I found this motorcycle. I think it was like a Suzuki 400 Cruiser, and the guy wanted like 80 bucks for it. And I only had 60 bucks, so I call him up and it's like, you know, can I come take a look at the bike? And it's like, yeah. So a friend of mine takes me to go look at the bike. It's cool. And it's like, well, I only have 60 right now. Can I mail you the rest? And he goes, yeah, whatever. So they give me the title, buy the bike, and you know, I eventually mailed them another 20 bucks for the bike. Go to DMV. I already had my motorcycle license, so that was an issue. And I can't remember where I got the insurance, but I called some company. I got insurance on the motorcycle, and so I rode the motorcycle for about 6-8 months. My brother lived up in Long Beach, so I would ride up to Long Beach from San Diego on that motorcycle. I think it was like a 1-cylinder. And so the problem was I couldn't ride the motorcycle on base. Back then, the Navy required you to take this alcohol and drug information awareness class before they let you ride your motorcycle on base. Now, you could have a car and get on base right away, but for some reason they didn't let you ride motorcycles on base. So after about 6 months, I got tired of walking. I would park my bike off base at the base exchange and walk through the gate and go to the first bus stop and take the bus to my living quarters, to my barracks. And I got tired of doing that, so one weekend when I went up to my brother's house, we decided to go look for a car. And so I traded my car in, or my motorcycle in, for for 300 bucks. And that was the last time for 30 years that I owned a motorcycle. Now, one of my classmates in the weapons systems school, he had a motorcycle. He had bought a motorcycle. It was an enduro, a dual sport, and so I rode that a couple times. But other than that, I was done riding on a regular basis. So 30 years later, I'm at my friend's house, and he has an enduro, and he said, hey, let's go riding. Well, he has, you know, him and his sons have enduros, so let's go riding. It's like, okay. So I was kind of concerned that I wouldn't be, you know, wouldn't remember how to ride, but man, I got back on that thing and it was like riding a bicycle. So that's the, and then the rest is history, so to speak. I've owned about 6 motorcycles in the past 3 years, and including this one. So anyway, that is my motorcycle story journey. Take care.